high in the Andes, where the air starves the lungs, a 12-year-old girl is buried alive by the state that calls her holy. The thin, brutal air of a 20,000-foot volcanic summit, a shallow pit carved from frozen earth. Within it, a child sits curled. Her hands are stiff around a small gold llama. Her lips are stained dark from coca leaves, her mind swimming with ritual beer. A finely woven alpaca dress cannot stop the cold that is now inside her bones. The priests adjusting her blanket are not monsters, they are bureaucrats of the sacred. One leans close, his breath fogging in the razor-thin air. He repeats the lie she was told in Cusco. You are not dying, you are becoming a guardian. The empire sleeps safely under your watch. If you are drawn to the raw, unvarnished truths of history, comment below where you are watching from. Her tongue is too heavy to answer. The snow begins to fill the pit around her. The last thing she feels is not the cold, but a deceptive, fatal warmth spreading through her veins. Her heart slows. She becomes an object, a frozen statue on a mountain, a policy enacted on a child's body. But this frozen death was not where her suffering began. It was the merciful end of it. For the Inca Empire, this was the reward for perfection. The true horror was reserved for those who were merely useful. To understand this, we must travel down the mountain, back to the terraced villages where she was still a daughter with a name. During the reign of the great Sapa Inca, expansion was constant, and with new territory came a new, chilling ritual, the imperial tally. One day, without warning, officials in bright tunics would arrive. They carried knotted quipu cords, not to count grain or llamas, but to inventory girls. Mothers would pull daughters behind them. A fixed silence would fall. The order was simple: line up the girls, ages 8 to 10. The inspectors moved with clinical detachment. They checked teeth, examined skin for any blemish, a scar, a birthmark. They were selecting raw material, not a person. The chosen girl, now called an Aclla, was pulled from her mother's arms. Her old name was erased from records. In that moment, her childhood ended in the village square. Her life as state property began. Her journey was along the empire's great roads to a windowless, fortress-like compound in the capital, the Acllahuasi, the house of the chosen women. The door sealed behind her with a sound of absolute finality. Inside were courtyards, workshops, and hundreds of other girls. The only men allowed were the Sapa Inca, considered a living god, and the Yanacuna, guardians whose bodies had been altered to ensure they posed no threat. Power here belonged to the Mamacuna, older women who were once chosen girls themselves. Their method was not brutality, but a slow, total recalibration of the self. The girls learned to weave kumbi, cloth so fine it was reserved for gods and emperors. They brewed chicha beer. Every action was ritual, every mistake an offense. The doctrine was whispered daily. You do not belong to your parents. Your body, your breath, your future belongs to the state. They were fed better than any peasant: meat, fruit, warm baths. Their skin was oiled, their posture corrected. This was not kindness, it was polishing an asset. The most effective cages are not made of iron, but of ritual and comfort. Years passed. The girls became young women, and then the state returned to harvest its investment. In a tense courtyard, they were sorted into 3 destinies. Some with advantageous lineage became political gifts, brides given to secure loyalty in distant provinces. Others took vows to become Mamacuna themselves, perpetuating the system. But the perfect ones, those without a single physical flaw, were marked for Capacocha, the ultimate sacrificial offering. They were told it was the highest honor. Their terror was dressed in festival robes. Cusco would erupt in celebration for them. Dressed in the finest cloth they themselves had woven, they were paraded before the Sapa Inca and the roaring crowds. It was a propaganda masterpiece, turning a sentence of death into a public spectacle of devotion. Then the long, grim procession to the mountains began. As they climbed, the world turned to rock and ice. Here, the empire's logistical cruelty shone. To ensure compliance, the priests administered heavy, continuous doses of chicha and coca leaves. The girls walked in a sedated haze, their bodies numbed to the altitude and their fate. At the summit, the ritual was chillingly practical. Placed in a fetal position in a stone-lined pit, surrounded by tiny offerings, the combination of cold, thin air and toxins would usually guide them into a frozen sleep. But archaeology tells us sometimes a quicker method was used: a single, precise blow to the head. The mountain received its silent bride. Yet even this was not the empire's darkest punishment. That was reserved for disobedience. If an Aclla broke her vow of chastity, a crime viewed as theft of state property, the punishment was annihilation by confinement. Her sacred blood could not be spilled. Instead, she was taken to a secluded cave or chamber. A bowl of water and some maize were placed inside. Then the entrance was sealed with stones and mud. She was left to scream into stone until the air ran out, erased without spectacle or witness. Some sentences are not about ending a life, but about erasing the very sound of it. And the retribution spread like a poison. The accused man was executed, his family killed, his home razed, his fields salted. The message was absolute. A chosen woman's body was a state asset. To violate it was to attack the empire itself. This system of sacred terror met its end with the arrival of Spanish ships. The conquistadors, in their hypocrisy, condemned the Capacocha as pagan devilry, then promptly looted the Acllahuasi and distributed the surviving women among themselves as spoils of war. For centuries, the story was told by the victors. Then the mountains began to give up their dead. The frozen mummies of children like Juanita and the Llullaillaco Maiden were found perfectly preserved. Modern science turned their bodies into testimony. Analysis of their hair, a biological timeline, reveals a brutal truth. A year before death, their diet shifted from peasant potatoes to elite maize and meat, marking their entry into the state's care. In their final months, cortisol levels, the hormone of intense stress, spiked dramatically. In their final weeks, biomarkers for coca and alcohol soared. They were not joyous volunteers. They were terrified children, systematically isolated, groomed, sedated, and killed. Today, these girls rest behind museum glass. We marvel at the Incas' engineering, their roads, their terraces. We must also hold this truth, that architectural genius was built alongside a societal machine that could coolly process human innocence into a tool of power. Their frozen faces ask us the only question that matters. When you look at them, do you see a holy offering or a child who never had a choice? If this journey into the shadow of empire resonated with you, support the channel by liking this video and subscribing to Shadow of History.